Whosoever desires constant success must change his conduct with the times. Niccolò Machiavelli. Think about that for a moment. The 16th century Florentine statesman, the man who wrote The Prince, is telling you that survival, and more than survival, domination, depends on you to control yourself before others control you. Fast forward to today, and the truth hits harder than ever. You are not being chained by kings or beaten into silence by soldiers. Instead, you're being lulled into weakness by glowing screens, endless opinions, and an invisible web of distractions designed to keep you harmless. And here's the cold reality. A distracted man is a powerless man. This channel, Ruthless Psychology, exists for people like you. Not the soft-eyed dreamers begging for validation, but the ambitious ones who sense that beneath the smiling slogans of society, a war for the human mind is raging. And the first rule of that war is simple. Focus is a weapon. When you lose focus, you leak energy. When you chase every opinion, you scatter your power. When you react to every insult, you confirm to the world that you can be controlled. And Machiavelli would have laughed at such weakness. He knew that men who cannot master themselves will forever be mastered by others. But let's not stay in abstract philosophy. Let's drag this into your life right now. Have you ever found yourself scrolling, telling yourself it's just 5 minutes, and suddenly 2 hours are gone? Have you felt that twitch, the itch to check notifications like a puppet yanked by invisible strings? That is not harmless. That is not casual. That is modern enslavement. Machiavelli wrote, "He who controls the people must control their minds first." And tell me, what do you think TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, or whatever platform has your leash are doing? They are not giving you information. They are farming your attention. And here's the ruthless part. Once they own your focus, they own your choices, your moods, your time, and eventually your future. So the question becomes, will you remain their slave, or will you become the man they fear? Because the man who learns to control his focus becomes dangerous. He doesn't need to shout. He doesn't need to explain. He doesn't even need to be seen. His silence alone unsettles others, because silence, when backed by discipline, becomes louder than noise. Let me give you a historical contrast. Julius Caesar's assassination was not the result of a sudden attack. It was provoked by his constant presence, his need to be seen, his hunger for glory. His rivals studied him because he was always visible. Compare that to someone like Vladimir Putin in our own age. You rarely see him react impulsively. His power is partly built on being unreadable, on making others guess. That's Machiavellian silence, not weakness, but dominance without noise. So, where do you start? You start by cutting off the leaks. Every useless argument you type, every petty debate you enter online, every attempt to explain yourself to people who will never understand you, these are cracks in your fortress. Close them. Machiavelli insisted that a prince must guard his state like a fortress. Your mind is that state. Guard it. Every time you open your phone without purpose, imagine handing the keys of your fortress to strangers. Would you do that in real life? Would you open the gates of your castle to anyone who knocks? Then why do you let memes, gossip, and distractions storm in and pillage your focus every day? The truth is brutal. If you cannot protect your attention, you cannot protect your future. Now, let me ask you, do you think Machiavelli was right? That the battle for power begins not in armies or elections, but inside the human mind? Drop your answer in the comments, because admitting the battlefield exists is your first weapon. And here's another challenge for you right now. Write this phrase, word for word. My silence builds empires. Why? Because every empire begins not with noise, but with unseen discipline. Rome was not built with tweets. Florence was not secured with gossip. Power has always belonged to those who could withdraw their energy from the meaningless and direct it toward the essential. Let's go deeper. Imagine two men in the same room. One is loud, chasing attention, desperate to be noticed. The other says nothing, watches everything, takes mental notes, and never reveals his hand. Who controls the room? It is not the performer, it is the observer. Because control is not about being heard, it's about understanding and leverage. Leverage is born from focus, and focus begins with isolation. People will say you've changed, that you've gone cold. What they really mean is you've stopped being available to their chaos. You've stopped being predictable, and nothing terrifies the herd more than a man who no longer dances to its tune. Machiavelli himself faced exile. He was banished from Florence, humiliated, left alone. But what did he do? He retreated into his villa, into silence, and wrote The Prince, a book that has outlived kings, empires, and armies. Exile became his weapon. Silence became his fortress. His focus, sharpened in solitude, forged ideas that still rule the world 500 years later. So here's your uncomfortable truth. The very thing you fear, silence, isolation, the absence of validation, is exactly what makes you powerful. Every second you spend explaining yourself is a second you could have spent sharpening yourself. Every breath wasted on gossip is a weapon you failed to forge. And every argument you enter is proof that someone else controls your strings. This is where Machiavelli collides with modern psychology. Cognitive science tells us that attention is finite. Every choice drains it. Every scroll fractures it. A fragmented mind cannot build empires. But a focused one? A focused one is unstoppable. So you have a decision. Will you remain scattered, predictable, easily provoked? Or will you step into the ruthless silence of focus? Remember this: the world doesn't silence you. You drown yourself in noise, and if you want to rise above it, you must choose. From today onward, treat your attention like treasure, guard it like a fortress, and wield it like a sword, because in a world of chaos, the quiet man who controls himself controls everything. A prince is also respected when he is either a true friend or a downright enemy. That is, when without any reservation, he declares himself in favor of one party against the other. Machiavelli wasn't only speaking of alliances. He was speaking about your most intimate war, the one for control of your emotions. Because here's the truth: power doesn't go to the strongest, the loudest, or even the most intelligent. Power goes to the one who can sit in silence while others react, explode, and collapse. Most men are predictable because they cannot resist the urge to react. One insult, one negative comment online, one disrespectful tone, and they jump like puppets on strings. They think they're defending their pride, but in reality, they're advertising their weakness. Machiavelli knew this. He wrote, "The first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him." Today, we measure not only by allies, but by how calm a man remains when surrounded by chaos. Because here's the brutal reality: the one who reacts first loses. Imagine this: someone tries to provoke you in front of a group. The average man explains himself. He argues, he raises his voice, he shows the crowd that his emotions are easy to manipulate. But the Machiavellian man, he doesn't flinch. He listens, he watches, he says nothing, and in that silence, he creates fear. Because people do not know how to fight a man they cannot read. In modern psychology, we call this emotional detachment. Not numbness, not apathy, but the ruthless ability to separate feeling from decision. The second they know what angers you, they own you. The second they see you flinch, they gain leverage. But the second you stop reacting, you own them. This is not theory. Think of business negotiations. The one who rushes to fill the silence, who blurts out concessions just to ease the tension, always loses. The one who waits, who lets the silence stretch, who refuses to show desperation, always wins. Silence in negotiation is not emptiness. It is a weapon, and you must train for it. Your emotions must become soldiers, disciplined and obedient, never acting without orders. Now let's cut deeper. Why is this so hard for most people? Because validation is their leash. Look around. Most people are not chasing power. They're chasing attention, and they confuse the two. They want to be seen, heard, praised, liked. But validation is not freedom. It is a collar disguised as applause. Every like, every comment, every compliment. It feels like reward, but it's programming. The algorithm feeds you when you are tame and starves you when you are real. That is not affirmation. That is manipulation, polished into entertainment. Machiavelli would spit on such weakness. He didn't seek claps. He sought control. He didn't crave to be liked. He craved results. And he knew that men who live for validation become slaves to those who grant it. So, here's the Machiavellian lesson for you. Kill the need to be seen. Yes, people will call you distant, cold, arrogant. Let them. That is the price of power. The man who needs to be seen becomes predictable, programmable, easy to manipulate. But the man who vanishes, who disappears into silence, who returns 10 times sharper, that man becomes a mystery. And mystery is terrifying. Think about the lion. He doesn't roar while hunting. He vanishes, studies, stalks, and then strikes without warning. That is strategic isolation. And when you return, the herd realizes they never understood you. That is leverage. So I ask you, what matters more, applause today or respect tomorrow? Would you rather be popular for a moment or untouchable forever? Write this below if you're ready to rewire yourself. My silence is sacred, because it is through silence that you regenerate. But let's not romanticize this. Silence is not easy. It will test you. You will feel misunderstood. You will feel excluded. People will accuse you of arrogance. Friends may drift away. And here is where Machiavelli's realism matters. That is exactly what should happen, because as you rise in discipline, those addicted to noise will fall away. And in their confusion, you gain space to sharpen yourself. Consider history. When Napoleon was exiled to Elba, people thought his story was over. They mocked him, celebrated his downfall. But in that forced isolation, he planned. And when he returned, he shook Europe once more. Isolation did not destroy him. It refined him. Now apply this to your life. Imagine vanishing for 6 months. No endless scrolling, no gossip, no energy wasted proving yourself to people who don't matter. Instead, you build, you read, you train, you sharpen your mind, you control your time like a weapon. Then you return, sharper, colder, untouchable. Who do you think wins? The one who begged for attention daily, or the one who disappeared and came back unrecognizable? The choice is yours. This is why you must treat focus as a fortress and validation as a virus. Most men die explaining themselves. They drain their strength defending their pride. They waste decades chasing approval, and in the end, they have nothing. But the Machiavellian man doesn't explain. He doesn't argue. He doesn't chase. He builds. He guards. He rules. So here's your second challenge. Go silent for 1 week. Don't announce it. Don't explain it. Just vanish. See who notices. See who panics. See who withers without your constant presence. And most importantly, see how much stronger, calmer, clearer you become when you no longer feed the chaos. You'll discover something terrifying. The world doesn't collapse when you go quiet. Instead, your mind sharpens, your emotions stabilize, and your presence becomes heavier. That is why silence is power. Not because it hides you, but because it transforms you. And when you return, you won't need to shout. You won't need to prove anything. Your results will speak for you. So ask yourself, do you want to be predictable, programmable, provoked, or do you want to be the man whose silence terrifies them all? If you're ready for the second path, then write this below. I am not here to react. I am here to rule, because the less they know, the more they fear. And the more you guard your silence, the more untouchable you become. It is not titles that honor men, but men that honor titles. Niccolo Machiavelli. Power has never been about appearances. Not then, not now. It has always been about leverage, the unseen weight that bends others to your will without them realizing they are being bent. And leverage is born from one thing: self-focus. In every room, there are two men. One speaks, the other listens. The speaker believes he commands the stage. The listener collects data, reads emotional cracks, studies weaknesses. And when the time comes, it is always the listener who controls the outcome. Machiavelli understood this. He advised princes not to obsess over fairness, but over control. And in your life today, the same is true, the cruel truth. People don't respect what is common, they respect what they fear losing. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than the man who cannot be baited, bought, or broken by validation. That man has leverage. So, what does this look like in practice? It looks like disappearing to refine yourself instead of begging to be noticed. It looks like controlling your attention as if it were gold. It looks like investing hours in sharpening your value so deeply that your absence becomes more powerful than other men's presence. Think about it. When a man vanishes for a year and returns sharper, stronger, wealthier, calmer, he doesn't have to demand respect. His evolution demands it. That's Machiavellian power, not popularity, not charisma, but cold, undeniable leverage forged in silence. Now, here's where the weak crumble. They believe discipline is boring, routine is restrictive, structure is prison. But Machiavelli would laugh. He would tell you that discipline is not prison, it is your fortress. The undisciplined man may feel free, but in reality, he is enslaved to his moods, his impulses, his laziness, his distractions. He wakes when he feels like it. He works when he feels motivated. He collapses at the first sign of discomfort. That is not freedom. That is chaos disguised as choice. The Machiavellian man, by contrast, builds structure so rigid that nothing can shake him. He does not wait for motivation. He operates by code. He does not rely on inspiration. He relies on routine. Every hour becomes a brick in his fortress, every habit a weapon forged, every decision a wall against weakness. Machiavelli did not write about calendars, but he did write about control. Control over men, over situations, over outcomes. And the first step in controlling others is proving you can control yourself. Because if you cannot rule your hours, how can you ever rule anything greater? This is why discipline must become sacred to you. Sacred, not glamorous. Sacred, not public. Wake not for likes, but for mission. Train not for vanity, but because weakness is liability. Build routines not for productivity posts, but because chaos is death to power. History proves this over and over. Alexander the Great rose not simply through charisma, but through relentless discipline. He mastered his army by first mastering himself. In contrast, countless rulers fell because they mistook indulgence for strength. Nero's Rome drowned in chaos, not because he lacked resources, but because he lacked structure. So ask yourself, are your hours ruled by you, or are you ruled by your hours? Let me make this clear. There is no freedom without structure. The man who thinks discipline is prison is already a prisoner of his impulses. The man who embraces routine becomes untouchable, predictable to himself, unpredictable to others. That is fortress psychology. Now, let's pierce deeper into the weapon they never see coming: emotional detachment. The most dangerous man in any room is not the loudest. It's the one who feels nothing but sees everything. While others explode, he observes. While others demand to be understood, he remains unreadable. And unreadability terrifies people because manipulation thrives only when reactions are predictable. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." Why? Because love requires vulnerability, while fear respects boundaries. Fear is stable, predictable, and obeys silence. This is not about being cruel. It is about being unavailable to manipulation. Think about modern life. Most people are emotional slaves. Their moods rise and fall with likes, comments, and gossip. One insult ruins their day. One rejection collapses their confidence. One betrayal shatters their identity. Such men are toys for others to play with. But the Machiavellian man detaches. He feels, but he does not react. He experiences rage, but he withholds it until it serves his long game. He feels insult, but he calculates instead of collapsing. He is not numb, he is disciplined. His emotions are not absent, they are caged weapons, unsheathed only when useful. And here's the power of detachment. It confuses people. They expect you to fight back. They expect you to explain. They expect you to collapse. When you do none of these, they panic. Their strings no longer control you. Their leverage dissolves. They waste energy trying to read you, trying to provoke you, trying to break the silence. And in their confusion, you grow stronger. This is why emotional detachment is not weakness. It is authority. Consider a simple example. Two men are insulted in public. One lashes out, raises his voice, demands respect. He looks strong in the moment, but everyone sees he was provoked. Everyone knows his strings are exposed. The other man listens, smirks slightly, and says nothing. Who walks away with real power? The one who wasted energy on performance, or the one who left the crowd unsettled, whispering, "What is he thinking?" That is psychological warfare. So here is your next challenge. Resist the urge to explain yourself for one full week. When accused, stay silent. When baited, smile and walk away. When misunderstood, let them misunderstand. Do not correct them. Do not waste energy proving. Because every time you resist reaction, you sharpen your detachment. Write this below if you accept the challenge. Detachment is my power. I feel nothing. I lose nothing. Because when you no longer react, you rise. And the man who rises silently, detached and disciplined, terrifies them all. Now let me leave you with a question. Would you rather be known as nice but controllable, or feared as unreadable and untouchable? The world rewards one of those, and it's not the first. Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack, and then they attack others. Niccolo Machiavelli. At some point, every ambitious man faces a terrifying question. Can you stand alone? Most cannot. They mistake solitude for punishment. They equate silence with irrelevance. They panic the moment the room grows quiet, the moment no one texts, the moment the world doesn't immediately affirm their existence. They don't collapse from external pressure. They collapse from the fear of being left with themselves. But Machiavelli would tell you this: solitude is not weakness. Solitude is purification. It is in solitude that the noise falls away. The fake friends disappear. The distractions dissolve. And you are forced to confront the raw, unfiltered version of yourself. The version you usually bury under entertainment, gossip, and endless noise. That confrontation is uncomfortable, but it is also the first step towards self-command. Because here's the truth. You cannot build clarity in chaos. You cannot sharpen your mind when 10 voices are pulling at it. You cannot become dangerous while being constantly available. The lion does not hunt in a crowded arena. He disappears, studies, waits, and returns lethal. Machiavelli himself experienced this. After being exiled from Florence, humiliated, and cast aside, he retreated to his villa. There, in solitude, he refined his thoughts, his strategy, his understanding of power. And from that silence was born The Prince, a book that has outlived empires. Exile was not his end. It was his rebirth. This is your opportunity as well. When you choose solitude, you choose transformation. But remember, not all solitude is equal. Weak solitude is hiding, sulking, wasting time. Machiavellian solitude is strategic. It is silence, filled with construction, not escape. So what does this look like today? It means using silence to build systems, to audit your habits, to cut addictions, to sharpen your body, to study relentlessly. Every hour in solitude must serve power, not pity. But society won't understand this. They will call you cold. They will call you disconnected. They will mock your disappearance. Good, let them. Their confusion is proof of your progress, because when you return, you will not be the same man they once knew. Picture it, you vanish for 90 days. While others waste time proving themselves online, you build in silence. You train while they gossip. You study while they binge. You plan while they scroll. And when you return, you don't announce it. You don't explain it. You simply arrive, sharper, colder, undeniable. And the same voices that mocked you will whisper, "What happened to him?" That is Machiavellian rebirth. Now let's sharpen this even further. Solitude is where illusions die. Without constant distraction, you will see your flaws clearly. You will see your wasted hours, your addictions, your emotional weaknesses, and most men run from that mirror. But the Machiavellian man doesn't run. He confronts it, burns away weakness, and replaces it with discipline. Modern psychology agrees. Solitude enhances metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. It strips away external influence and forces you to see patterns you never noticed before. Patterns of distraction, patterns of emotional reaction, patterns of weakness. Break them in solitude and you return unrecognizable. This is why solitude terrifies your enemies. They hope you stay needy, responsive, and easily provoked. They hope you cannot bear silence because silence is where you evolve beyond their reach. Think of the monk warriors of history, the samurai in meditation, the stoics in retreat, the strategists who withdrew to sharpen before unleashing war. They were feared not because they were loud, but because they had mastered silence. And here's your uncomfortable truth. If you cannot bear solitude, you cannot bear power. Because true power is lonely. It demands separation from the herd. It demands walking alone when others cling to comfort. And only those who embrace that exile become leaders. So here is your next challenge. Vanish tactically. Not forever, not in bitterness, but with purpose. Choose 30 days. No unnecessary noise. No desperate seeking of validation. Dedicate those days to building your fortress, mind, body, and strategy. When you emerge, you won't need to explain anything. Your presence alone will demand respect. Write this below if you accept the challenge. I disappear to evolve. I return. Unrecognizable. Because that is the Machiavellian formula. Let me make this brutal but clear. People will not respect you for being everywhere. They will respect you for becoming rare. Scarcity creates value. And nothing is more scarce than the man who vanishes and returns with silent power. Think of how soldiers fear the sniper they cannot see more than the army they can. Think of how businesses fear the competitor that never announces moves but suddenly dominates. Think of how politicians fear the opponent who reveals nothing until the decisive strike. That is what you must become, the ghost in their system. The presence that is felt, not constantly explained. And here's the hidden benefit. When you withdraw, you force others to reveal themselves. Watch how people behave when they can't reach you. Some will panic, some will gossip, some will drift away. And that is good because it reveals who was real and who was only feeding off your availability. Silence is the filter that separates allies from parasites. Machiavelli wrote, "Men must either be caressed or annihilated. In modern terms, this means you either protect your peace or eliminate what threatens it. There is no middle ground. Solitude is where you learn which attachments to caress and which to annihilate. So ask yourself, who in your life thrives on your weakness? Who drains your energy with chaos? Who benefits when you stay distracted? These are not companions. They are enemies disguised as friends, and silence exposes them. From this moment on, treat solitude as your war room. Plan in silence. Train in silence. Execute without announcement. And when you return, let your transformation speak louder than any explanation ever could. Because the world doesn't reward men who are constantly seen. It rewards men who are felt, who return colder, sharper, untouchable. And when they ask, "Where have you been?" smile, say nothing, and let your results answer for you. Men must be either pampered or annihilated, for they can avenge themselves of lighter injuries. Of more serious ones, they cannot. Niccolo Machiavelli. This is not just about war. It is about you, about the man you are killing and the man you are becoming. Because the truth is this: the greatest enemy you will ever face is not the crowd, not the critic, not even your rivals. It is the older version of yourself, the weak, distracted, reactive man who sought validation, explained himself endlessly, and wasted his energy on noise. That man must die, and the weapon that kills him is evolution. Think back on your journey so far. You've withdrawn your focus from distractions. You've learned the silence that unsettles. You've built routines that fortify you. You've embraced solitude not as punishment, but as purification. And now, what comes next is not improvement. It is annihilation of the old self. Evolution is not about becoming better than others. It is about becoming unrecognizable to who you once were. The man who sought validation is gone. The man who reacted emotionally is gone. The man who begged to be seen is gone. In his place stands someone colder, sharper, more precise, not numb, simply untouchable. This is what terrifies the world. They expect you to want closure, to want apologies, to want revenge. But the Machiavellian man doesn't need those things. His silence is revenge. His growth is retaliation. His results are destruction, because nothing unsettles your enemies more than seeing you thrive without them. Nothing haunts them more than realizing their betrayal no longer touches you. Nothing crushes them more than watching you become a force they can't even provoke anymore. This is why Machiavelli insisted that cruelty, when necessary, must be swift and final. Applied to the self, it means this: kill the weakness completely. Leave nothing of it alive. Do not allow old habits to linger. Do not entertain old attachments. Do not explain yourself to old companions who only knew the weaker version of you. That man is gone. That life is over. Now you exist in a new realm. You no longer chase status. You generate it. You no longer seek approval. You dictate it. You no longer beg for power. You embody it. And here's the secret. This evolution does not make you louder. It makes you quieter. You stop needing to shout. You stop needing to prove. You stop needing to explain, because your very presence carries weight. Your stillness shifts the atmosphere of rooms. Your composure terrifies those addicted to chaos. Your focus, guarded like treasure, becomes a crown they cannot steal. This is where Machiavelli's coldest truth becomes clear. Power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists. Think of history's most ruthless figures. They didn't have to brag. They didn't have to explain. They didn't need to post every move. They simply moved with precision, and the world adjusted around them. Genghis Khan didn't need likes. Rockefeller didn't need comments. The most powerful men in history were not performers. They were architects of silence, builders of systems, masters of time. And now, that can be you. But you must accept the cost. People will not understand you. They will accuse you of arrogance. They will say you've become distant, cold, detached. Let them. Their misunderstanding is the price of your sovereignty. If you waste energy correcting them, you fall back into their control. Power is not about being liked. It is about being untouchable. So here is your final challenge. Embrace evolution as annihilation. Do not return to old versions of yourself. Do not reopen doors you have closed. Do not negotiate with the weaker self you left behind. When doubt creeps in, remind yourself, that man is dead. When old distractions tempt you, remind yourself, that man is gone. When people demand explanations, remind yourself, I no longer owe anyone anything. Write this in the comments below if you accept this. Path. I've become the silence they can't decode. Because from here on, you are not playing the same game as everyone else. While they waste energy chasing attention, you are multiplying leverage. While they burn time reacting, you are building systems. While they beg for approval, you are guarding your throne. And here is the final truth. Evolution is endless. You do not return to who you were. That man served his purpose and was buried. Each cycle of solitude, silence, and self-discipline creates a new version of you, sharper than the last. You do not plateau, you ascend. And the higher you climb, the less the world can touch you. At this level, you don't need to crush enemies. You don't need to retaliate. Your existence is retaliation. Your presence is punishment. Your success is destruction, because nothing annihilates an enemy more completely than realizing they can no longer affect you in any way. That is ultimate Machiavellian power, not revenge, not cruelty, not domination through noise, but quiet sovereignty, built in silence, guarded by discipline, sharpened by solitude, and untouchable by emotion. Now, you understand why Machiavelli's words survive centuries. They are not abstract theories. They are weapons, if you are ruthless enough to wield them. So let me leave you with a final reflection. The loud man may be noticed, but he is also predictable. The performer may be praised, but he is also controlled. The distracted may be entertained, but he will always be weak. But the man who masters his focus, detaches from his emotions, disappears into solitude, and evolves without apology. That man cannot be touched. He doesn't beg. He doesn't explain. He doesn't fold. He rules. And from this day forward, if you walk this path, so will you. This is ruthless psychology. This is the silence that terrifies. This is the evolution that cannot be stopped.